Hello and welcome back to my channel, Rover Turbo. In this video, a Mark 6 Golf video, I'm going to be doing the timing chains. So this is the next part to this series of videos. So basically putting on the balance chains, the main chain and the oil pump chain, and basically, you know, carrying on with the car and trying to get it up and running. So thanks very much for all the subscribers, all the likes, all the comments and everything. It's greatly appreciated, and it makes it all worthwhile really when people actually make the comments. So keep on doing it, and we'll see you soon.
Working on the chains, the balance chains and stuff at the moment. So sorry about any background noise. So what I've done, 24mm bolt, it's the original crankshaft bolt, that's been in there all the time, and I've just rotated the engine round, and apparently these marks, you have to have that lined up with that bolt head there, and this dot on there where that coloured link is, that has to be lined up with that bolt head behind. You can just see that. And then on the crankshaft pulley, that coloured link you can see there with the arrow, that's for the balance chain, and that other arrow that's just to the right of it, that's for the main chain. So apparently you don't have to rotate the engine and get the coloured links lined up, but I did. So the coloured link is on that arrow, the coloured link is on that arrow, and the coloured link is on that arrow, that dot, sorry, up there. You can just see a dot there, it's very faded, it's a light little dimple. So that's the balance chains timed up. It's a TDC, you can just see the crankshaft, sorry not the crankshaft, the con rod in there. These balance chains now timed up. So basically behind here you've got the tensioner, so that's a 24mm socket, and then obviously you've got all of the guides and stuff. So I'm going to take the tensioner out, 27mm socket. It's obviously too tight for me to do with one hand, so I'll get that undone, get all the guides off, and then set about cleaning off this silicone with an old Stanley blade. Right, that was pretty tight. I say pretty tight, it was very tight. So obviously slacking this off, because we're going to have, there's a new tensioner, there's new guides, and there's a new lower sprocket, and obviously a new chain. Right, so that's all of the guides out, main bolt. So this is it now. Here we go. There we go. There we go. That's the balance chain. Okay, so you just need to make sure that our sprocket is lined up with that, and up with that. And then this, you can see how this little divot is at the top. So this should come off. Oh. Right, you see that at the top there, a little flat spot at the top, so that means it's at TDC. And then on here, we've got the corresponding flat spot again at the top, TDC, that goes at the top. So obviously I'm going to give this all a good clean up, get rid of all the old residue, all of the old silicone, and then start putting stuff back together. So I've given everything a good clean. I've got all the silicone off of the mating surfaces, sprayed it with brake clean, and just went over it with a Scotch Brite type this. So I'm soaking the chain in oil, as it recommends that you do. I've sprayed all this off. I haven't changed. I'll just put a rag over this bit here just to stop any bits getting down in there. And I've sprayed everything down with brake clean to make sure it's all clean. And then this is the new sprocket. So obviously we've got our notch there and our notch there. So that's going to go so that's on there. Right, well, that was tough. That is a very tight fit, so I had to use a rubber mallet. Made sure I got it accurately located in the right place, but it was tipped up at a slight angle, so I had to just gently tap it with a rubber hammer just to get it flat, and now the bolt goes in, it just pulled in. That's the new chain on. That's been soaking in engine oil for a period of time, which they say in the instructions. So basically, I'm not quite sure why there's a different coloured link there and why there's two different coloured links there. They don't seem to line up with anything. But anyway, we've got the darkened link there, which lines up with my dot, which lines up with my hex. You've got the darkened link down there, which lines up with that arrow, and you've got the darkened link, your darkened link there, which is lining up with that dot there, which is lined up with the Torx bolt. So basically, that's exactly how the balance chain needs to go on. So now I just need to put my guides on and my tensioner in, and then that section is done. Balance chain is on completely. Tightened up all the bolts, put the tensioner in, tighten that up. All my dots are all still in line. There's no reason why they wouldn't be, because nothing has moved. So on to the subject of torquing. Bolts. I generally don't tend to follow torque figures unless I think it is absolutely vitally important, i.e. wheel nuts, so they're not too tight and they're not too loose so they don't fall off, and head bolts obviously. But these kind of bolts, I mean, they came undone with this thingy ratchet. Now this isn't particularly very powerful, and it undone the bolts. So don't do as I do. If you want to torque them up, I've used a 3/8, not a particularly long 3/8 ratchet, and I've done them up. I've been playing with cars since I was 14, so I have a pretty good understanding of what is tight and what is loose. So those bolts are tight enough not to snap and not to be loose. So if you want to do them up to torque specs, torque them up to torque specs, but I believe torque specs are just there so you don't snap or strip the thread from the manufacturer's point of view. So they're done up, and anything that I think that needs to be vitally important that's torqued up will be torqued up, but otherwise I'm just going to do them as tight as I believe they need to be. These kind of bolts here are going to be high tensile strength bolts. You're not going to snap those off unless you gun them up with a 1/2 inch impact gun. So they are just tight by hand with the ratchet, so they are tight. I've got the replacement cam. It's an aftermarket cam, but it's an original spec cam. I could have gone for a second-hand one, but this was 110 delivered. It's an engine company on eBay. With the cam in place, our timing marks are now somewhat in the correct position, i.e. facing up. Obviously we haven't got our notches now, and obviously our lobes are not pushing the cams, the inlet, or the exhaust valves open anymore, because that's what the old one was doing. If you put it into the tine position, it was when you bolted to push the cam down, it was pushing these valves open. Obviously it was very close to hitting the pistons. So
yeah, that's it. I've cleaned up all the mating surfaces again, so I'm just going to lube up the new cam. I've already put some engine assembly grease in where the cam goes. I'm just going to pour a little bit over the top, and then I'm going to obviously re-silicone the cover, and then bolt that back down again, and then hopefully everything, the chain, will all go back on as it should. So this is where I need you to subscribe and like the videos, so I can get more money out of YouTube and get my own workshop and get loads better content, engine changes, all that kind of stuff. It would be really helpful. Just a little button for you helps me out. Cam cover's all back on, it's all tightened up. The sprockets are all roughly in the right position. Obviously the balance chain's done, the turbo's all back on, the exhaust manifold's back on. I've completely connected up the turbo, so the oil drain is connected at the bottom, the support bracket is connected, so the turbo's completely done. So all I need to do underneath is, I've got the bolts here just loose with the new gasket in the downpipe. Then the main exhaust support bracket, which bolts to the rear cross member, that needs to be bolted back up. And then there's a tin plate that goes around and covers the inner CV joint, that needs to be bolted back on. That's all done, and then so I'm just soaking the oil. I'm just soaking the chain in some engine oil. Then I'm going to get the chain on and get that timed up, or get that fitted, and then obviously need to move on to the inlet manifold, but I'm not looking forward to that. To do the pump chain, I was going to just not do it because you can't get the chain out of that hole. Well, I believe you can't. I can't see any way you could get the chain, because there's no gap between the front of the sprocket and the actual case. So I would have thought that you'd have to have taken the sump off anyway to be able to take the chain off, but I didn't realise you had to take the pump off as well. I've had a quick Google and whatnot, and no one covers replacing the pump chain. No one. I can't find a single video of anyone replacing the pump chain, let alone anyone doing a video of replacing all of the chains. When I bought this, well, when I got this kit, it was a complete kit, it was the whole kit. I didn't even realise there was a balance chain there until I found it in the kit. So sump off, pump off. It's a good opportunity for me to check the pump, check the pickup and that, check the sump for debris and stuff like that, give it a good clean up, and obviously put it back together. My main issue is how to support the engine, because it's currently on the sump. So I think I'm probably gonna maybe use the jack and a piece of wood up to the underneath of here, so have a piece of wood down, going all the way down here onto the jack, and then having the jack support the engine. Otherwise I've got to temporarily put the engine mount back on, which I could do to be able to take the sump off, because I've got to take the jack out obviously. So anyway, I'm going to crack on. I'm going to cut back in when I've done a few bits and pieces. I've got a new oil filter, the old one. I'll just keep popping that back in, just to, I've been covering it over anyway. And I think I need a new auxiliary belt. Well, we'll put a new auxiliary belt on it as well. Just before I time this up properly, it's pretty much timed up, but just before I show you the process, I'm just going to show you how easy the chain on the exhaust side will jump if you lose tension. So at the moment I've got no guides, no tensioners, nothing on it, and I'm holding tension on the chain at the moment with my hand. If I release the tension, this is basically sprung loaded, just slightly, I've had to manipulate, turn the cams slightly so they're under spring pressure. That's how you time them up, they're slightly under spring pressure, which is where these locks come into place. So just to show, I'll relieve the tension off with my hand. See how easy that skips those teeth? And that's what happens when the tensioner release, when the tensioner is not keeping tension on the chain as it should do, and that engine's, travelling at
2000 whatever thousand RPM, that's how easily those chains can skip. So that's what happens. So I'm just going to talk you through the timing procedure. This makes it a lot more difficult on this particular engine because the new exhaust cam I fitted, A, doesn't have the slot for the spanner to turn it, and it also doesn't have any holes in the sprocket that you could get a pair of circuit pliers in and turn it. So I've had to turn this one ever so slightly and this one ever so slightly with a spanner or whatever to get them in time. Now we've got the locking pins down here, so these screw into existing holes in the head, and then these pieces here, they slide on these dowels, so you can slide them out to unlock them and slide them back to lock them. So at the moment, I don't think you can see that, but at the moment the little tooth of the tensioner of the locking pin is locked in the gear, and the same on that one. Okay, so we've got the timing marks here, one there, and you can't really see this one, but you can see it at the top, that little divot, and it does come through to the front as that little arrow shaped thing. So the golden rule is that they need to line up with the coloured links, and on this particular chain the coloured links are only on one side. So we've got two coloured links up here, we've got one coloured link down there, and then there's two coloured links together. I don't understand why they've done that, but, or they're darkened links I should say. So this darkened link here is on the mark, that darkened link there is on the mark, and it's down below. I've put a zip tie to pull tension on the chain. Normally you can put a zip tie through the hole in the sprocket and hold the chain on, but obviously we can't do that. So first thing you need to do is to get these two sprockets in roughly the correct position. Okay, so to do that, this is what you need. Okay, so the intake cam needs to be between 61 and 64 millimeters from the center of this cam bridge to the timing mark. This up to bang in the middle at 62. So between this center portion here and the timing mark need to be between those two figures. And as you can see there, I'm bang on that mark, okay? And it's on the coloured link, okay? And then overall, between the two timing marks, between 124 and 126. So again, we'll go 125. And between these two timing marks, here and here, we need between 124 and 126, and I've got bang on 125, which is bang on in the middle. Okay, so we've got our coloured link on here, we've got our coloured link on here. Okay, and down here we're looking at the smaller of the two. Again, you've got that darkened link, which is on the arrow there on the crankshaft sprocket, and that is basically it. This engine is in time. So all we need to do is to fit the guides, the two guides. Fit this guide first, and then I believe you have to take this out to fit the other guide in, and then the tensioner and so forth. So I'll get on with that. Got all the guides on. It was a bit of a faff. It's just a bit fiddly, trying to get everything in without the chain skipping and that kind of stuff. All the darker marks all still line up. I've checked everything on there. All of the darker marks all line up on there. The tension is in place. I haven't pulled the grenade pin yet, so everything is as it should be. Up here I've checked
the distance between my two timing marks is still bang on in between what it should be, and I've also checked from there to there, those two overall, and they're bang on as well. So I'm going to pull the pin, and that's the chain done. So there you go, so that's the chain done. So what I've done, I've put some timing marks myself. That little silver line there on the case, one there lined up with the timing mark. And I've done it again on there. I hope you can see this because I can't see anything from the sun. And then behind there, I've done a mark on the tooth, and then I've done a mark on the casing behind. So I'm going to rotate the engine round a few times, and then I'm going to check my marks again. The problem is, what's going to happen now is those coloured links aren't going to line up anymore, unless I turn it, I don't know, 4 billion revolutions or whatever it is to get those marks to line up again. I don't know how many revolutions it is, but and then I'll turn it around at least 2, 3, 4 times, and then I'll line all my marks up. I'll check that they line up. I'll check that they line up, and then I'll do my measurement again. But I have no reason why it wouldn't be a problem. Turn the engine over a handful of times. It all turns over fine. There's no locking up or anything. It all seems to be spin over freely. So as we can see at the top here, this line lines up with that mark. That line lines up with that mark, and that lines up with that mark. So everything is where it should be. So that's good. So this is the sump. We've got one electrical connector there for the sump level or oil quality or whatever it is, and then I'm assuming these are all T30s. Yeah, T30s. So I'm just going to whizzle these bolts out. Okay, so that's the pan off. So I undo all the Torx bolts obviously, and then I just got a chisel and a hammer and a screwdriver, just worked it in and just cut and just pried it and carefully just teased it off. It's just stuck on with silicone, there's no gasket there. So then let's just leave this plastic thing, and there's a couple of bolts. There's one back here and there's one in a little dimple in there. So I'm going to take those 2 bolts out. Right, they're T27s, just to be a pain. Right, so there's 3 bolts holding this plastic thing in. There's another one up the front here. So, and then that just leaves you with the oil pump and the pickup. Interestingly, there's nothing in there. I don't know whether there's supposed to be a bolt in there, but there wasn't. So these are T45s. So that's the pump off, 3 bolts. Quite tight. I had to take the extension off of the gun because you lose so much torque with the extension bars on guns like that. So they came straight out, and it made a right old mess. So luckily I kept the oil pan underneath, and as you drop the pump, a load more oil comes out. That's the oil pan all cleaned up, ready for a bead of silicone. So the chain is in place, the plastic pan is back in place, the pump's back in place, all the flanges all cleaned up with brake cleaner,